Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the new features update webinar for December 2021. My name is Bradley Wilkinson, and I'll be taking you through today's items. Before we get underway, we'll just touch on some housekeeping. So the webinar is being recorded. Attendees will receive an email after this with the link of the recording. Also, if you have any questions along the way, please feel free to post them in the Q&A. We'll have a team of Andrew, Lucky and Eric who will be helping answering questions today. I think we'll get underway now. It's past 11 o'clock. So we'll just start on a bit of a Superstream update. I know it's a bit of a key feature over the last few months for BGL and a lot of people. So just as a way of an update, so we now have over 27,000 funds using the new BGL ESA. There's also been over 11,000 rollovers processed. There was a webinar done in October. So if you want to, that's quite a detailed webinar covering a lot of different angles. So if you want to see that, you've seen it or you want to see it again or you haven't yet seen it, please go to YouTube and search for BGL Corp Sol, and you'll see that webinar along with a lot of other webinars that we've uploaded to YouTube. So yeah, please check that out. Alrighty, so we'll just jump straight into it. So Superstream common problems and solutions, just a bit of a recap, and then we'll go through a few Superstream improvements as well before we get into the rest of today's update. So just covering rolling out from an SMSF to APRA. So just I guess still a common issue we're seeing, or people maybe aren't sure. It's really critical when doing this that the ABN needs to match the USI. And also it's critical that the USI entered is correct. So just make sure you have these details entered in properly before processing that rollout. So I'll jump into 360 just to show exactly what I mean. So from the Superstream dashboard, if I'm processing and transferring out, just ensure that the ABN and USI are entered incorrectly. So, and just a note there, it needs to be the APRA funds ABN, not the company or other entity ABN. It has to be APRA funds ABN. If you're not sure, just double check. There's a super ABN lookup. You can check the USI and ABN just to make sure that's correct. So if the USI entered is actually incorrect, perhaps not even USI at all, you should actually get a response, an error response saying this USI doesn't exist. But if the ABN is incorrect, then you try to process this request, that could cause other issues down the line. It won't match up at the APRA funds end. So just jumping back, regarding the rollout payments, so we've actually received confirmation from the ATO just last week when making the actual, the physical payment. It needs to be done via internet banking. So, and just to clarify that, so you can't actually have someone go into the branch to make that payment. And this is, as I said, this is ATO requirement to follow their Superstream standard or spec to be compliant. It needs to be internet banking. So I can understand this might cause some concern. So the advice they've given is before making that payment for the trustee or account holder to actually call up and I guess the bank and just double check what the payment limit is, because there can be daily or transaction limits. Check what that limit is and ask for it to be increased if temporarily increased if needs be, depending on what that can be increased by the bank. You may also, the other advice from the ATO is, worst case scenario, you may have to process multiple rollover payments. So as I said, this is advice and clarification from the ATO saying when processing the rollover payment, it needs to be internet banking, an internet banking transaction, not a payment down at the branch. It'll most likely be rejected by the APRA fund due to it not being compliant in the ATO's Superstream system. So just keep that in mind. It's really important. The other thing worth mentioning there, the payment reference number must be correct. Now, we've mentioned this in previous webinars, but it's just another thing to reiterate. When you make or you start the process in 360, we generate a payment reference number. I'll just jump back into 360 to show you that. So this top record here, you can see rollout awaiting payment confirmation. And the payment reference number in the third column there, that has to be entered in the internet banking transaction. That's the way it all links up at the other end. So make sure that's done correctly. If not, there could be some issues there. You know, we don't want to see that happening. So just make sure it's done properly and that's copied through. We generate that there, and you can copy that to the trustee or financial planner when they're making the transaction or processing that transaction. A couple more things I just want to quickly cover in terms of common problems and solutions. Just a note, when setting up or selecting an ESA, I'll select a different fund actually to show you what I mean. So when setting up an ESA for the first time, if it has never been registered, you actually need to register first, not simply select from this drop-down list. So this is in the fund details screen. So you can see this fund doesn't have an ESA selected. You can't, well, if you simply come in here and select BGL SF360, and if I go to click save, we've now got a very clear message saying Superstream registration is required. So, and we have a link to take you through to actually register correctly. So you can't just select it and then expect it to work. You have to still go through the proper registration process. So we've seen a few instances where that's happened. So now we've got this check in place. We have the link, so you can go through and actually register properly from the Superstream registration page. So if for example, I tick the fund I want to register and actually register through that proper process. So just keep that in mind. And the other, I guess, big one is if you're changing from Australia Post to the BGL ESA, once again, don't just simply come in here and select, switch it here. There's actually a change process. So in the Superstream dashboard, we have change ESA at the top left-hand corner there. So make sure if you're changing from Australia Post to the BGL one, go through that proper process. So just keep that in mind. Alrighty, we'll move on to Superstream Improvements. So we'll cover a few things that have gone out in the last few weeks. One of them is just I guess making the whole process a little bit easier, more clear with be able to select the bank account, validate that, status improvements, also some tooltip messages that make it a lot easier to go through this process. So I'll jump back into the software and show you those things. So let's say, for example, I'll quickly go through if we're, I guess, we're the receiving fund, so when money's coming into this fund. So I'll request a rollover and receiving fund. So now we have just a simple improvement, but it makes a difference to the setup and also for validation, I guess. We now have a drop down where you can actually select the bank account. So for example, if the bank account's already been set up as a feed, the BSB account numbers in the system, it's correct. That's already previously been validated. Different funds might have a lot of different bank accounts and you want to select the right one. You'll have a full list here. This fund just has the one bank account. I select that and it pre-fills the details there with the name as well. Now, as always, you can change that. If for some reason the BSB account number needs to be something different, you can on the fly enter in whatever you need to here, but the drop down just, I guess, makes you a bit more certain when doing that process. And likewise, this was already in from a few weeks back now, but on the flip side, if it's a transferring fund, so oops, wrong page. If it's a transferring fund, I request a rollover, we're transferring. So now, and this has been there for a few weeks now, but if I enter the USI, we have a web service where we can actually call to get the correct details. So the BSP and account number, as you see, there was automatically filled in with the institution as well. So it's just helping, I guess, those steps, making sure things are right. And it's very critical, the BSP and account number is correct for this process. And now that's, that can be done automatically based on the correct USI. We're also looking as a future enhancement to do extra validations on the ABN. Not sure when that will be, but just keep an eye out for that. That'll help validation around that area as well. A few other improvements involving, I guess, just the status, the status wording, I suppose, trying to make it clearer, the different stages of the rollover process. So for example, in this top record here, I've put the rollout request through, and then we just change the status a bit to make it a bit clearer. So rollout awaiting payment confirmation. So really what's happening now is we're waiting for that confirmation. And the next step, we've actually put tooltips in as well to make it really clear what step this is at, what you need to do. So in this case, the rollout request has been sent and we're waiting confirmation on payment receipt. So we strongly recommend, so at this stage, you'll need to, provide instructions, payment instructions to the trustee or financial planner. We strongly recommend that they speak with the receiving fund to make sure that the message has been, is received prior to making the payment. And then, as I mentioned before, once that payment is going to take place, make sure it's internet banking and make sure that the payment reference number is used. So just, make sure you're following those steps. And there's all the other, you can see here, different type of statuses, different instructions, or different stages along the workflow. So now it's very clear, almost like a help in the screen, so you can just see exactly what the status means and what you need to do at that given stage. So have a read of that, and it should be pretty straightforward at what you need to do at those given steps. Also, if I just show an example for the receiving fund, similar thing now, rolling awaiting response. So I've processed a rolling request. We're now waiting for the response to actually, I guess, confirm that. So that's the stage of this particular event. We recommend that after a couple of days, if this hasn't updated, reach out and to the fund to see if, what the delay might be. So okay. So that covers the Superstream improvements. We'll jump into, well, actually, just quickly cover off what's coming soon with Superstream. I mentioned the ABN validation, using that fund validation service. So when you have the USI entered in, we'll look to make some improvements around that ABN validation. Another one I'll quickly show is the transaction history report. So if I jump back into the software, I'll go into a different fund. So I'm going into the transferring fund. So this is, we're transferring out. Now, at the moment on screen, if I click on the right-hand side, there's different actions, view transaction history. This is already available, and you can view all the events and all the transaction history there. So the different days or different, who was processed by, what was happening, what the steps were, just like an audit trail. And this is in our test environment. You won't see this in your firms just yet, but it will be coming out in the near future. You'll be able to print or download that transaction history report. Alrighty, we'll move on. So if you have any questions, I can see a few coming up in the Q&A. The team will help you answer them as we go through, but I'll move on now to some other new features we've implemented over the last few weeks. So Xero tax integration. So we have a new integration with Xero. So we've always had the ability to export tax data, the annual return data to Xero, sort of a manual way, but now we've actually taken the next step, and it's more of a sort of a seamless integration. So just so you're aware with this, it's from the 2021 financial year onwards. So most likely the current year that's being worked on, plus going forward, it'll work as well, but not historical years. Also, it's currently supported by, for SMSF entity types. Now, I have a video, pre-prepared video that we'll just quickly go through. It's using our in our test environment, a demo ABN, so we can actually show the integration properly. Obviously, in your firms, you know, if you have Xero Practice Manager, you'll be able to do this as well. But just to give you an idea of what it looks like, it goes for about 2 minutes. So we select our fund. Before we're exporting the tax data, we need to create entries. So we go to the compliance screen and create entries. And once that create entries process is done, we'll go and have a look at the tax compliance screen. And I guess what we'll do is we'll see all the data there, maybe enter a few things in. There's an LRBA option we're going to tick. So we'll go through to the tax compliance screen. This is the tax return and the data that will be automatically sent through to Xero. So we're putting in an audit date, selecting where we want the refunds to be made. So all these figures will flow through automatically. Now, in this example, we're ticking yes for the LRBA, by a licensed financial institution, and we'll show that later in Xero Practice Manager, just to show you that anything we do here will flow through automatically. So once you've gone through your normal process and filled all this information in, we strongly recommend then we validate. So down the bottom left-hand corner of the screen, there's a validate option. So this is to make sure everything in 360 is actually has been validated. Xero had their own validations, but we recommend you do it in 360 as well before integrating. So down the bottom left-hand side, there's Xero Connect, and that opens up to Xero where you have to prompt it to log in if you haven't already logged in. You select your fund. Now, based on the ABN from 360 and the ABN in Xero, it'll automatically integrate and link, and all that tax data in the annual return will be sent through. Now, once that we've got that successful message, we pop over into Xero Practice Manager. Under the returns, we select our fund, and we'll have a quick look just to show you a few of the items that flow through. Under financial information, you can see all those values have come through, but also as an example, the LRBA you can see is ticked to yes, which is what we did in 360. So just a quick demo, just showing you how that works. It's quite simple, quite seamless, and I guess is an improvement on, I guess, the more manual way of doing it. I'll just jump back into the software. Just to quickly show you again, that video sort of went past pretty quickly, just to show you exactly where it is under compliance. So Xero Connect down the bottom left-hand side. So as I said, we recommend once you've finalized everything in 360, still validate as per usual, and then you can connect to Xero down the bottom left-hand side. There is still the old option for Xero Export, but by default now, this sort of more seamless integration is the default method. Okay. We'll jump now into data feeds and some improvements and new feeds we've added in previous weeks. So we now support Explore Wrap integration. So I'll just jump into the software just to quickly show you. So in the Connect and Feed Management screen, under the Wraps and Platform section, you can set up Explore Wrap. So if I click on Setup, now, just to show you, and just to clarify with this, we have had Explore Wealth IAS integration for a number of years. That's otherwise known as MDA. Explore Wrap is just another product from Explore. So we now have access to the integration for Explore Wrap as well. So if you are setting up an Explore Wrap feed, or even Explore Wealth, I guess just be certain which platform it is, which product it is. For example, if your client is using Explore Wealth, but you set up Explore Wrap, it won't integrate. It needs to be set up correctly. So just confirm with your client or the financial planner or advisor, what product it is. But we do support both products now. So yeah, and you would simply select that and go through entering in the account information and setting up the feed. So in terms of authority for Explore Wrap, just follow the instructions here. It's basically speaking with your advisor, and they will, on your behalf, set that up at Explore's end so you can start receiving data. Explorer supports bank transactions, trades, and income transactions, like most of our wrap feeds. So the other new feed we're supporting as well, a new broker feed, Austasia Financial Planning. So that's under the Contract Notes Share Data Pack. So as mentioned previously, if there's any brokers that currently aren't in that list, we have around 150 brokers we support, but if there's anything that we're not currently supporting, please let us know, because we're always looking to add to that list. So it's quite a highly likely we will be able to add it if you give us the name. We'll have a look into that for you. So yeah. Okay, now I want to take you through a bit of a revamp of our wrap feed setup screen. So we've implemented, I guess, a new feature to allow you to map the wrap feeds directly to the existing bank accounts and investment accounts. And this not only assures, better data mapping and then more accuracy with the data feeds, also allows for better reporting. We have new reports that I'll show you in a bit as well, and you'll see how all that ties in. So I'll jump back into the software to show you that. So I'll just change funds. Okay, so in this particular fund, in the data feed screen, under wrap feeds, you can see this fund already has 2 BT Panorama wrap feeds set up. Possibly it's a segregated fund, maybe husband and wife have one account each, whatever it might be. And also just to further complicate things, that they've got a CFS wrap, just as an example, that we're going to set up now. And I'll show you how we can sort of set these feeds up and make it very clear where the transactions are going to be allocated to. And then I'll show you the flow on effect of that in the reports as well. So if I click on setup, so we're going to set up, they have a CFS wrap feed that we've just found out about, or maybe we've manually been keying that in up until recently, but now we want to set it up as a feed. I'm just going to put in a sort of dummy account ID, select my CFS wrap cash account. Now, the new feature that I want to focus on is right here. We have a new option. This new option will be on by default for any new feed you set up. Any existing feeds, it will be off, but you can turn it on. So it's link holding accounts to feed. So basically all your bank accounts or term deposits, all your investments, we now have an option. If this toggle is turned on, if I scroll down a little bit under the holding accounts, account mapping section, we now have a linked tick. So basically you're saying, all right, I'm setting up a new feed. I want these cash accounts or these investments. Well, I know these belong to this feed. You might have a report from your financial planner, or in the past, you know what investments belong to this particular platform, and you simply need to tick those investments. So I'll just quickly show you. If the toggle's off, it simply removes that linked information. So any existing feeds will have the toggle off, as I mentioned, but you can turn them on. That's fine, no worries. And any new feeds will automatically have this on. It's just to make it a bit more clarity around when you're setting up the feed and what you want, actually, how you want the feed to operate. So I'll take you through now to setting up this. Okay, so for example, we're setting up CFS wrap here. So this CFS wrap account has a few cash accounts. So we simply tick those cash accounts. And then we're basically saying to the system, these cash accounts belong to this CFS wrap account ID that I've put in here. So when data comes through from that, it'll help map to it. Now, I'll take you through also the other two sort of key items in this screen, because in the past, there's been a bit of confusion around this screen. And I want to make it very clear what needs to be done. So if you're setting up a wrap feed that has a portfolio code, that indicates that this particular provider of data has the potential, or your client has potential to have managed accounts, SMAs, managed portfolios within the feed. And if that's the case, you also need to make sure you enter the portfolio code in when doing the setup process. That's the way our system, because when they send the transaction data, that's the way our system will know where to map that data. So in this case, I mean, I'll just make the names up for now, but if it's a directly held sort of asset or bank, you can just put in the word direct. That's our default sort of setup. But let's say in this case for CFS wrap, they also have a managed account that might be, let's just say Australian shares or whatever it might be, an international. I don't think that these aren't real portfolios for CFS, but just as a simple example. So just be aware that any provider you're setting up that has this column showing portfolio code, be aware that there is a potential that you need to set up the portfolio codes. There is every possibility that your particular client with this feed, maybe they don't have any portfolios, they just trade directly. In that case, you don't need to put these codes in. If it's direct, we'll auto pre-fill that later on. But in the case where there is a portfolio needing to be entered, please do that before turning the feed on. Otherwise, there's potential to cause duplication in the system. So if you're not sure about that, chat with your advisor, get a report from the third-party platform, because the reports from most providers will be very clear. They'll say, okay, these are the holdings, they belong under this portfolio, and I'll normally have a code that you can enter in. So just do that step first before turning the feed on, because once you turn the feed on, if it's not set up properly, it can cause issues. The third thing I want to show you here, just reiterating on previous webinars where we've covered this, the security code. So it's also important that we're mapping to the cash accounts and term deposits. So in the feed, they might send us a generic code that it needs to be used to in a way to map to the particular cash account. So now in the case for CFS, and our help file will be very clear on this as well, the default cash account code is actually APCS. So if I go to the help file, I'll just quickly show you that. And other wrap providers, we have this information as well. So if I just opening up our help file here, if I go to the setup tab on the help file, so if you're setting up a feed and you're not sure what to do, just click on the help file link, click on setup. And if I scroll down where it talks about the holding account information, you can see there for CFS wrap, the two main cash accounts that are used. There's the main primary cash account, and there's also the accelerated cash account. So if they've opted in for an accelerated cash account, it'll be a different code. So all these steps are very important. It's a one-time setup. Once it's set up, you don't have to worry about it moving forward, but it's just important to get it right the first time. So if I go back into our software, so for example, in the second portfolio, it may actually be the same code, but they're in different portfolios. So one's directly held cash account, and one they have a Oz, SMA or whatever you might want to call it, and they also have a cash account in that as well. So when the data comes from the data feed, we'll know based on we've ticked these two accounts. We've also set up the portfolio codes and the cash account codes, and then the data will flow through to these cash accounts properly, and they won't cause any duplication or any issues. So it's just important to get these setup steps right. Now the third option here, maybe they've got in their other portfolio, they may have an accelerated cash account, for example, so or whatever it might be. But just check the reports and be sure before setting up that you know what assets are on hand, how they need to be mapped. And if you have any questions, feel free to contact us. We can always help. But also, if you can get the investment reports from the platform, if you're setting up the feed to start from, for example, 1st of July 2021, you want a report that's dated 30 June 2021. So at that point in time, this is what was held, and this is what I need to set up. Any newly purchased investments or any new cash accounts that appear after that date that's fine, because our system will automatically create them as they need to be created. But anything existing needs to be set up and mapped properly to start with. So I'll just scroll down. So I've just been focusing on the cash accounts, but the same principle applies for investments. So for example, if these managed funds are sitting within the CFS wrap feed, I'd also put them in. I'll just say these are directly held, so I'll just put them like that. Now, in this case, the security code, because it's a security that we know the code for, has an underlying attached security in our chart of accounts, we don't need to enter the code in. It's only the cash accounts where that isn't available that we need to enter a code in, but we still need to enter the portfolio code. So if I scroll down further, so for example, let's say all of these are part of the CFS feed. Maybe direct, and then possibly these ones were part of a different portfolio. Once again, set up the portfolio, tick the option, so you know that this particular account is linked to this feed. And once you've done this one time, you won't have to do it again. As I said, any newly purchased investments will automatically be created with the portfolio correct. So just the last couple here, I'm going to put in. So maybe these are part of the international portfolio if that particular provider has one, just as an example. And now I'm done. I've set up my feed. You can see here on the right-hand side, because I have a couple of other feeds set up for this fund, you also see BT Panorama. So this particular TAH is actually with my BT Panorama feed. So it's very clear where it's linked. Anything I tick is just for the feed that I'm currently setting up. Okay, I'll click save. And now I'll show you, I guess, the end result of all this. So first of all, by doing what I just did, it's mapping the existing investments. So you're making sure the feed works properly. But now I guess the end result is the reports and seeing how that looks in the reports. So there's been some improvements made to our reports around this area. So I come through to our report screen. So at the moment, there's 4 reports that I guess grouped by this setup. I'll show you in a second. Let's get them ready. And we're looking to add a few more reports as well. So investment summary, investment income, unrealized capital gains, and realized capital gains. So if I preview that, just to be clear, this is a report setting. So the normal investment summary report will still show the way it always has. But if you want to group by this, so you want to see if you have funds that have feeds with SMAs within, or different feed providers coming in, and you really want to separate that out so it's very easy and clear to reconcile with third-party reports, you click on the options on the right-hand side of the report, and you'll see there's a group by portfolio option. That'll be off, but if you toggle that on, it's saved at the badge level. So any fund under that badge will have this setting. So just be aware of that as well. Now I've already saved all these to have portfolio turned on, and I'll preview that report just to show you what that looks like. So in the past, all of our investments, doesn't matter where the data is coming from, it's just sort of lumped all together, and it can be very tricky when trying to reconcile with third-party reports. Now you see clearly where all the data sits. So for example, BT Panorama is the provider, that's the account. So maybe, as I said, it could be a segregated fund where they've got 2 accounts for whatever reason. All the investments that sit under that BT Panorama account, all the information's the same, all the values, everything's the same. It's just the way the report is grouped makes it a lot clearer to see. BT Panorama, my second account. Then I have my CFS wrap. And within this is sort of sub-levels. Within CFS wrap, I actually have different portfolios. So I have my Australian portfolio, direct, INT, and all the investments that the way I set that up is automatically put or grouped in this report. Now, in the future, just say this particular advisor purchases more or different investments within the let's say the Australian portfolio, it'll automatically link that for you in the setup screen. And when you come to this report, it'll automatically show it here. So you won't have, once you've set up the first time, you won't have to do that again. It's only for the existing accounts that you're setting up. Same as if I scroll down, investment income report, as well as our unrealized gains is grouped the same way. And also our realized gains, if I scroll down a bit further. We're looking to add a few more income reports and reconciliation reports to that as well in the new year. Okay, so we'll move on now. Just a quick other thing I just want to show around this area. If you're looking in the help file, if you want more information about how to set this up, and I showed a couple of feed providers today, but for example, we have there's many wrap feed providers that we can set up this way. We have a help file article, just to search for account mapping or wrap feed setup account mapping in the help screen. And we've listed all of the providers and exactly what steps you need to follow, because every provider can be a little bit different depending on the type of data they send through. So if you are unsure, have a look for this article. It'll make it very clear how you need to set up your provider and what the best way forward is. And this particular feature, while it's great for the reports, it's also really important, I guess, for funds that may have different feeds coming in. You might have a premium feed and a BT wrap feed or whatever it might be. So it's really important for that to differentiate those holdings. Okay, just on to reports. Well, I've already displayed the new provider portfolio grouping report. Another one I'll quickly show is there's been a small improvement to the reports index. So if I jump back in the software, so if there's any failed reports, so let's add an index in. So in the past, if there was a failed report, we'd still show it in the index, which I guess is a bit misleading because it hasn't really been generated. So let's say, for example, I haven't created entries for this fund. If I preview this report, that final segregated income report will fail, but the index doesn't show it because it hasn't actually been generated. So I'll scroll down to show you what I mean. So this particular report has an error, couldn't be produced. So our index won't actually show that report. Just a small improvement there based on some feedback. Okay, a couple of other improvements I'll quickly show. We have the director ID export to CSV contact list. So if I jump back into the software and I go to under settings and contacts. So the director ID, which can be entered in for any person. So if I click on this person, just to show you as an example, they don't have a director ID, but this is with the director ID field. I can now export, well, I've been able to export all of our contacts, and in the CSV or the spreadsheet that's exported, you'll have all the different contacts plus that director ID field. So if for some reason you need to see it across your whole system, who has director ID, what their director ID is, that's an easy way to do that. One more quick thing I'll show you in our entity workflow screen. We have a new filter. So it's quite a handy one, GST registration status. So simply showing you, I guess, all the funds that are not registered or all the funds that are registered, but for GST, shows your total. You can filter by that on the left-hand side there. So just GST registration status right here. Just so you're aware, if all of your entities, and this is across all entities, not just SMSFs, all other entity types, simple invest entities as well. If all entities are the same, so to say all entities are registered for GST, we won't show the filter because you're not actually filtering by anything. It's all going to show all the time, but it's for when there's some yes, some no, then we'll show that filter, and you can filter between in quite an easy way. And if you download the full, on the top right hand corner, if I download a complete list of all my entities in that report or Excel spreadsheet, it will have the GST status, and you can see that in the report as well. Okay, on to Simple Invest. So we've added a few new features in the last few weeks for Simple Invest. I'll just take you through them now. So we've added the revaluation reserve for companies and individuals. That was previously for trusts. So if I jump in, just to quickly show you. Just need to change my entity. So for this entity, if I go to compliance and calculate taxable income, you can see here there's been an increase in market movement for investments of 16,500. If I scroll down, there's now the reserve option. So instead of paying out this, you can allocate to a reserve account. So this was, as I mentioned, this was already previously on trusts, but now it's been added to companies and individuals as well. All right, I'll jump to another item. So for tax installment paid, so I'll jump to an individual. If I look at in the transaction screen, I'll quickly show there's been a tax payable amount paid of $1,000. So you can see there highlighted in the transaction screen. Back into compliance. We're now showing that in the statement of taxable income on screen. You can see there towards the bottom of the screen, income tax installments paid of $1,000. So that's now showing there. And the last thing for Simple Invest entities that I'll show, we made an improvement or an extra option for distributing income for trusts. So I'll just jump into another entity to show you this. My investment trust. So under the compliance screen and the distribute profit screen, previously we could distribute based on taxable income. And now you see the option here. I'm just going to click on the little cog next to share of income trust estate. Previously it was taxable income, but now we can also distribute based on net accounting income. So you can flick between the two. So for example, here you can see a total of 27,300, and that's a portion between down below. And if I switch that to net taxable income, you can see it's a different amount, and I can click on the auto adjust or auto fill form to so it adjusts automatically. So simply by clicking here, you can change how you want to distribute income to for trusts. Okay, and just a note on Simple Invest in general, I suppose. A lot of the features I've been showing today and what we've shown in the past, Simple Invest is built on the same engine as Simple Fund 360. So a lot of the features, a lot of the back-end engine is supporting that Simple Invest as well. So for example, a lot of our feeds, our bank feeds, data packs, all of our matching engine and a lot of the reports engine, any improvements and anything we add there will also apply to Simple Invest, as well as the Simple Invest team are adding other features specific for Simple Invest as well. So I guess that's the beauty of having the two softwares together the way we do. It's just that sort of backing engine that's always worked so well for Simple Fund 360 also supports Simple Invest. So we keep an eye out for Simple Invest through the new year. There's a lot of new features we're adding and yeah, exciting times. Okay, let's just move on quickly to some of the things that are coming up, I guess in the early new year. So I mentioned I showed you the report for the portfolio grouping. At the moment, it's supporting for wrap and platform feeds, but we're also looking to add that for our contract note service. So all the broker feeds will be added to that as well. Once again, it's an opt-in option. You don't have to set it up that way, but if you do have a fund that you want to make it very clear that these are my NAB trade investments, these are my ComSec, I also have a BT Panorama feed. You can set it in the future. We'll be able to set up for brokers as well, so you can clearly distinguish that in the reports and the chart of accounts. There'll be further Superstream improvements. I mentioned a few of them already. Just to recap, just the further validations on the USI with ABN, also the transaction history report that I showed in the screen as well. Also, the team's been busy working on a new document screen. Here's a little sort of a mock-up screenshot from our testing environment, just to show you what it'll look like. A lot of the old functionality is still there, but it's just improved functionality on top of that. We're trying to make it an easier screen to use and better way of grouping documents. So you can see on the left-hand side of the screen is the chart of accounts, and different documents might be attached to different transactions based on in particular chart of accounts. So you can group by that way. The tagging functionality is still there. I'll just enlarge that a little bit. You can see a bit more detail there. You can add comments as per usual. And one thing of note that the team will be working on in the new year for this new document screen, just looking at having a better, I guess, workflow and statuses around digital signing. So the old document screen doesn't quite have that. So that's why we're building a new screen for a lot of reasons. But yeah, we really want to have improved workflow around digital signing and different statuses for that. So make it a lot clearer. Okay, well, that wraps up today's session. Thanks everyone for joining us today. The next update webinar it'll be in the new year, most likely looking around February. We'll confirm the exact date early in the new year and have invitations sent out. So we'll keep this session open for the next 5 or 10 minutes as there's still a few questions coming through. So if you have any questions, feel free to post them and we'll keep this open just for a little bit longer. But otherwise, I hope you have a wonderful day and a great Christmas break. And we look forward to seeing you all in the new year.